Well, kicking off with the easy bit to start, can we maybe just get you all to introduce yourselves real quickly and talk about where you fit into Team Eugenius? Starting with Warwick, I guess.
Okay, I'm Warwick Davis. I am currently the producer of Eugenius, one of the producers, one of three. I was introduced to the project about 3 years ago, it felt like now, when Chris and Ben here approached me about playing a character and recording a concept of a couple of the songs, which got me totally enthused and hooked on the project. And I wanted to make sure we saw it on the stage and could share it with a much wider audience.
Yeah, my name is Ben Adams and I am the co-creator and writer. I've sort of been in charge of all the musical side of things, and Chris has been taking charge of all the script side of things really, but we've been sort of taking some turns of just doing most of it really together really. And yeah, so we're not actually on stage performing it, but we're very much behind the scenes and have been working on this for quite a few years now.
Yes, so I'm Chris Wilkins, obviously co-writer with Ben, and actually when we open the show on the 22nd of January, it'll be 4 years pretty much to the day since we started our very first song. So we're ready to go.
And I'm Daniel Buckley, and I'll be playing Ferris, who's one of the lead characters in the production at Ellen Palace.
Well, I mean, Chris, after 4 years, you must be pretty good at giving a synopsis by now. For people who haven't obviously been lucky enough to catch the previews and stuff, can you give us a quick synopsis?
I will try my best. It's actually quite a difficult thing to describe because there's so much within it, but I'll try and do it as quick as I can. So there's a character called Eugene, so he's in the 80s in America, and he's a young kid there who, every time he goes to sleep, he has these dreams of like distant worlds and galaxies and superheroes and villains. And he feels inspired to try and turn them into a comic book. He loves comic books and wants to sketch them and write his own comic based on those ideas. And just by chance, obviously, as often the case with these things, a movie company at the same time wants to create a superhero movie in the 80s and cast a German action star as a superhero. And he wins the competition and his comic book gets turned into the movie. Now, as this is going on, as these things often happen, the superheroes that he dreams of may actually be real and may end up on the film sets to cause some havoc. And it's about finding the sort of hero within, and Eugene's got to step up and save the world from the evil Lord Hector.
Very good.
Thank you, mate. There we go.
I'm in. Sold. And obviously, Warwick, I mean, you've done lots of different things in your career, but obviously theatre and stage is one of them. I've seen you in a cheerleader outfit in Christmas Panto to prove that. I'm curious, what was it about this project and this particular character that most excited you when you first got involved?
If you hear one of the songs, and you can do that because there are some songs you can stream from all of the popular online services, Spotify, iTunes, etc. Have a listen, and immediately you kind of, I mean, the songs, they tell such stories. They paint pictures in your head and remind you of the 80s, and they're very catchy. And so as soon as I heard the songs, I met Ben and Chris here. I was just taken in with their kind of enthusiasm and their kind of vision for putting this on stage, and I wanted to be a part of it in whatever capacity they would have me. So, whether it was playing a character in the show or being more on the creative side, and that's what I'm involved with as far as the other Palace run goes. I'll be more on the producing creative side of things there. But I've enjoyed playing Hector, and I will play Hector again if they'll have me in the future, because he's a fabulous villain.
Well, actually, there were certain parts that we, as we were writing the show, we had certain people in mind while we were writing the particular parts. I'm not saying that you're an evil villain in real life, but we've sort of channeling everything to do with Warwick and all of the sort of previous amazing films that he's done, where he does play sort of villainous characters. And at that stage we didn't have any clue that Warwick would even want to be involved acting in it or be on the concept album or anything really. So we were sort of just taking a punt that maybe he'd like to join in. Yeah. So we contacted him through some friends and sort of were hoping and praying with all our fingers crossed that he would like to get involved, and obviously not just getting involved now, but obviously producing it and taking it to the next level. So we're very grateful.
I always remember the first time we met Warwick to work on the project. I turned up at Ben's house before Warwick got there and realised I was wearing a Star Wars t-shirt, and Ben was like, "He's just going to think you're a fanboy. I'm not inviting him round." So I was
never going to be able to leave.
No, I sat sort of with my arms covered, and he went, "Nice top."
I must say, it made me slightly anxious when I came in there. But no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, and also the guys, their attention to detail and making sure everything was right, even in those first recordings. I was like, yeah, you guys are really something special creatively, and you've just taken that on in the script and in the kind of the working that you've done on that, and now producing a complete album. It's just so right and so perfect. And yeah, if we hadn't got a venue for the show, I think the whole thing would just burst. We just need to now, it needs to be shared with the audiences now, because they are always the kind of final ingredient in the success of a musical. You know, it's all very well everyone on stage having a great time and singing the songs and telling a story, but the audience for Eugenius and a lot of other really successful musicals, they get involved as well, and they certainly will in Eugenius.
Well, that's what was so nice about, we did a concert performance at the London Palladium, and that was it was a workshop, but most workshops are done sort of above a pub to about 20 people, but the Warwick and the other producers that were involved were so confident in the piece that they wanted to sort of show it in a much larger scale, and you don't get much larger than the Palladium. Yeah. So we did that. It was a bit of a risk because all those years of work could have gone horribly wrong within seconds, but thankfully all the reviews and the response was brilliant. So I mean, that was a long time ago now, and we've spent a long time trying to find the right theatre for the piece, and ever since I went to the other Palace, which is where it's on, which is Andrew Lloyd Webber's main theatre to bring out new musicals, I knew that was the right place for it. So it was really just a question of asking when they had availability, and thankfully they came up with it, which was good.
Yeah, I think you can get away with a Star Wars t-shirt. I think Warwick would have been more concerned if you'd been wearing a very lucky leprechaun t-shirt, if such a thing even exists.
Yeah, I actually said to him, I said, oh, well, Hector's kind of based on when I mean, I'm a massive horror fan as well, so leprechaun's very much in my collection. And I said, oh, obviously there's elements of the leprechaun character, and I'm just thinking, please don't think I'm just some crazy guy that wants you to do all of this stuff. So,
yes, I was entrapped. It wasn't really a musical after all. You just wanted to meet me.
And in terms of our wonderful star, can you talk a little bit about what excited you about the script and about getting to work with this talented and rather handsome group of people?
It was, I got an audition just like most other people, and I didn't really know anything about it until I got my recall when I had the material. And it was when I read the scenes, and this character is just so confident, and that's the best thing about him is his confidence, and he's so unhinged, and his energy is incredible, and he's not ashamed of himself, and that's what I think is so great. There's so many characters out there who don't fit inside a box, or they class themselves very much as a geek, and he owns it, and that's what I think was so amazing. And I remember I was doing my audition, just playing the scenes, and they were like, yeah, just give more, and I was like, the further you could go with it, the more fun it was. And then it came to rehearsing and then actually doing the show, and that's when I knew the response from the audience was just, for the whole show, it was just incredible. I'd been involved in amazing productions that have had great responses, but just the full Palladium, just on their feet, going crazy at the end of the show was just amazing.
Well, you've been in everything from Book of Mormon.
Yeah, I've done some amazing productions. The Book of Mormon had an amazing buzz around it. Louisville was incredible. That had this crazy, it's like a concert feel. The audience don't just applaud, they scream, they shout, and they get really involved. And I remember just feeling then, this is something special. So since then, I've just been like, hey guys, I still exist, and I'm very interested in anything happening. So I've been pestering them.
Open the curtains, and he's there.
Yeah, so, yeah, just like, remember. So I did the album, which was again another amazing experience. You know, as a performer, you want to do as many things as you can, and for this show's legacy as well, to be involved in that is amazing, to have the album, the concept
Talking
album.
of the concept album, we have another star from the concept album over there. Come over.
Yeah.
This is Joanne Clifton, who's the current reigning champion of Strictly Come Dancing, and she is a very come and kneel or whatever before me. Come and kneel before us.
There is in fact an extra chair if you want to.
Bring it up.
You came prepared.
Yeah. So we're currently starring in a musical called Flashdance, and we're on the road, and I needed to record a character within the musical called Super Hot Lady, and obviously Joanne was the obvious choice. We actually contacted you ages ago though, didn't we?
Well, of course they did, didn't you?
Yeah, it was pretty much at the start of the process. I'd sort of got in contact with Joe and sort of sent the music through, and obviously you had so much going on, but you said from then that I really want to get involved in this, and then you started working with Ben, and it all worked out.
It was really, really weird. I really want to do, if you'll have me next time, please. Thank you.
Of course we will. But yeah, so we recorded all the songs now for your part and Dan's part, and the concept album is fully ready, but we've only released 3 tracks now, and as you said before, you know, it's available on all sorts of Spotify's and iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So.
Obviously, music's a big part of the show, but so is the whole spectacle. And I know that eagle-eyed choreography fans might notice some S Club Junior style moves in there. Can you talk a little bit about your wonderful choreographer and the general look and feel of the show?
Yeah, well, I mean, our choreographer is a guy called Aaron Renfrey, who is actually, I mean, he does do musical theatre stuff, but he's more known for doing pop choreography, really, so for bands like the Saturdays and that kind of stuff. And I think that was exactly what we needed for this musical, because it's a very 80s inspired musical, and most of the songs are set out with a convention that is more like a pop video, especially songs like Super Hot Lady. It's more like a sort of MTV video pop concert on stage with an amazing storyline. So we wanted to sort of incorporate that, and he did an amazing job at the Palladium. He's amazing. We're so creative.
But it's also his choreography. It tells a story and it's funny. I mean, it's kind of, to make choreography funny is a really difficult thing to do. But I'd seen, there were moves in there I'd never seen before, but they just were brilliant, weren't they? I mean,
it was lovely to blend all those ideas, because you don't want to be separate groups. You don't want the directors to take one approach on it and the writers to take another, and everyone worked together as a team. So not only did he come up with some fantastic dance moves that I'm sure Jo would appreciate from her background, but also, as you say, I was crying with laughter at the story that he was able to tell through the moves.
And the ensemble that they got for the choreography for Aaron to work with from Lanes, were they all from Lanes?
Yeah.
And they just did such an amazing job. They just took to it, and every time we would work kind of on different things, and they would be downstairs in a different studio, and when we were rehearsing for the Palladium, they'd come up and they'd be like, okay, let's run this number. We'd have done what we were doing in our room, and they'd come up and we'd all just be like, gobsmacked.
Well, it did help that the parts that they were playing was called The Fish People.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't look great on your CV, does it?
I played a fish person. But no, I mean, he sort of took it on, and I think he delivered something that we'd never seen before. And certainly the audience at the Palladium had never seen before, and I think that was part of the charm of it, was that people were witnessing something that they just went to go and tell all their friends, and they were like, oh my God, you have to see this show, Eugenius. And of course they couldn't, because it was a one-nighter. So thankfully now they get to see it for a full run.
They are going to get a chance. I mean, Warwick, obviously this is a show that, as we've heard a few times, is very much a celebration of kind of that glorious era of the 80s, and that really, I think, still lives very strongly in our imagination, in our current popular culture. Why do you think it is, as someone who's such a big part of so many of the iconic films and pop culture reference points in that series, why are we still coming back to that point?
I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and thinking, do I just think the 80s is the best because it was my teenage years and I have most references to that decade? Or did it just produce some really cool popular culture stuff, movies, music, celebrity? I think it's the latter. I think it did produce some of the best stuff. There were some awful things, awful films and stuff, but many of them, and then kind of, they were so bad they were good anyway, those. So I don't think we need to worry too much about that. But, you look at the success of something like Stranger Things at the moment, which is set in that decade, and all the little callbacks, all the things we recognise from that decade in there. I think it is just a brilliant sort of, I guess it's like a kind of, you would look into that decade and it's just, there's stuff you can take creatively and use.
I think there's also a massive element of imagination, because it's just before that real kick-off of CGI animation. So it's like, I grew up with Ray Harryhausen, sort of watching all the puppetry work and all of the work that George Lucas was doing, and sort of using the imagination, and it became the decade where anything became possible as we learned to use more techniques. And so you've got these fantastic films that hadn't existed, or we didn't believe they ever could exist, and now I think we take it for granted a little bit that they're so easy to
I
do.
actually prefer it how it used to be back then. When you see so many CGI things now, I think it actually ruins it.
Well, it's kind of going back that way with the stuff we've been doing on Star Wars recently. There's a lot more use of those old techniques, performers in suits and puppeteers and that sort of thing are being used more as part of the overall toolbox. CG is still very much there, but all of these different techniques are used together, as opposed to just going, right, now we've got CG, we're going to just do it that way, because I think people do appreciate a real performance.
You've got things like Dark Crystal coming back, so the Jim Henson work's all still there, which is amazing, and it's lovely to see these incredible talents being able to bring new versions of their work out, and the clever sort of animators and puppeteers and all those sort of things. It's really cool.
Well, the thing about the 80s, nobody was afraid either. It was one of those kind of decades where you could just try stuff, and it was never really too over the top or too big. It kind of, you got away with it, whereas I don't think the 90s and decades that we're in now, I don't think you can quite do that anymore. And Eugenius is able to take advantage of that to the full. As you mentioned earlier, the soundtracks. You can actually use instruments and use them in a way that you probably couldn't get away with in music currently.
Absolutely. I mean, I write and produce for all sorts of artists. Also some of the biggest people in the charts right now. And I think the joy for me of writing a musical like Eugenius and the music and the way that I produced it is that there weren't any limitations, and I think now a lot of music and a lot of sounds, and it's all about being very cool and dark and linear, and the 80s wasn't about that. If I wanted to throw the kitchen sink in, to the last chorus and put hundreds of vocals over it and do the biggest, most obtrusive snare drum, for example, or I could, the options were limitless for me, and I think that's why it was so fun to do it, and all the performers, Dan and the band and stuff like that, they have so much fun performing, not the music and the script, and that it actually is so infectious to the crowd, and I think they in turn sort of can see how much fun we're having and join in.
And Warwick, just talking about the 1980s and icons, I think obviously one of our most beloved icons was Princess Leia, and as someone who had the rare privilege of getting to work with Carrie and having such a very special relationship with her in that film, can you give your kind of thoughts what made her such a remarkable and important piece of our 80s iconography?
I think one of the things that made Carrie special, especially to the fan community, was the fact that she really did appreciate the fans genuinely and always gave such a lot to them, a lot of time, and if anybody ever saw her on stage, for example, she was open, she was honest, she was just very, very funny as well. And I don't think that's true of all actors, and some of my fondest memories of Carrie are spending time interviewing her on stage and really never knowing what I was going to get. I'd write the show, I'd kind of be prepped with what we wanted to do, what I was going to talk to her about, but as the show unfolded, it would just take its own direction, and she'd give it her wonderful energy, and it was so relaxed. She'd always kick her shoes off and sort of lay on the couch and just tell stories, and there's 4,000 people in the room just totally hooked on every word she's saying, and that was just, they were my fondest memories, and she was everybody's princess, really.
She would have been singing along to Eugenius, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do we have to let the guys go? Yeah, I'm afraid we have to let you go.
Well,
Sorry.
thank you guys for your
Thank you.
time. Really
Cheers.
appreciate this, and
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Cheers,
Cheers.
guys.
Cool. Thank
Good
you.
luck.